had one last shot, one video to make the impossible happen. About a year ago, I made the inevitable decision to stop working on my passion project after receiving a conscription notice from the Korean military. But I had one last goal. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how I made Sukuna in Minecraft. Now, before we even make Sukuna, we ran headfirst into the real problem. My old code. Just for the record, whenever I yapped about Project JJK's code being clean and efficient in my previous videos, that was all bullshit. The reality is, it was loaded with complex inheritance classes, hard-coded numbers, and was just plain messy. The fix to this though was switching to composition. Basically, you can think inheritance as spaghetti code and composition is building with Legos. This single switch alone provided a solid foundation for the rest of the other systems we were about to code. For example, my old particle system demanded constantly restarting the game for even the smallest changes. By building a web app using React and 3JS, we can now use JSON files to import particles and even custom first-person animations in real time without actually having to restart Minecraft. This overhaul and the new animation system built on state machines made our old abilities much more fluid. And with all the tools set, it was now time to work on Sukuna. But I needed a better vision on how Sukuna should be implemented in Minecraft. Now, I was in the United States about to graduate from college, so free time was very scarce during this time, but we can still plan something out. The problem was that our skill slots were limited. While the original plan was to make each ability work both as Dismantle and Cleave, as a JJK fan myself, I had to see if there was a difference between Cleave and Dismantle. So I asked my friend Jaded Satoru. Talking with Jaded, I come to understand that Dismantle are mid-long range slashes that you see often, like a projectile. Cleave, on the other hand, are short-range attacks and is much deadlier than Dismantle because it can actually adapt to the opponent's durability. So in theory, Sukuna can spam Dismantles at a short range like Cleave, but it's not as efficient. And in Minecraft terms, you can think of Dismantle as long-range attack like a bow and arrow, whereas Cleave is like a netherite sword with sharpness enchantment that ramps up every time you attack someone. And so once I had a better understanding of how Sukuna's abilities work, I redesigned my project document and began coding. The first ability we worked on was Dismantle, Relentless Slash. One of Sukuna's bread and butter move, the core concept here was to make an invisible slash that can cut through anything in a straight line. But how do you carve a diagonal line through a physical terrain based on the player's direction? The solution was to use raycasting. But a slash isn't just a point, it's a plane. We needed to make sure that the plane was always slicing sideways relative to where the player was looking. To do this, we use something called a cross product. This is just a fancy way of telling the game to use the player's view direction and generate a new direction that is perfectly perpendicular to it, forming the clean slash. But Sukuna doesn't just use one slash at a time. In some scenarios, he spams it, which is why if you now hold the ability, you'll actually send a barrage of slashes at your target. Okay, this is with the wither. Oh my. With Dismantle done, we tackled Cleave. Instead of firing a ray, we create a small temporary detection box around the player to ensure a target is within melee range before the slash triggers. And to mimic the durability adaptation, we make Cleave deal true damage, bypassing the target's armor entirely. This simply required rewriting Minecraft's core damage function to ignore the target's armor value and output raw damage. However, unlike Dismantle, Cleave's main appeal isn't from the logic, it's from the visuals. Whenever Sukuna used Cleave in the show, you can see a sequence of impact frames taking place. But after seeing that, you start to question yourself, can we really replicate that? It's quite a challenge because creating impact frames in real time is much harder than simply drawing each frame. But with numerous iterations and a little bit of brute forcing, we managed to get a satisfying result. Now, last time I made impact frames, I had a few people saying that it was a little bit too bright, so I did dim down a little bit. I think what I'm going to do is ask my friends and ask them for feedback. And after getting actual feedback from my friends, we managed to end off with this. Now, you may notice that Cleave ability is actually named Dismantle and Cleave. This is because later in the video, we make an ability called Carnage that essentially gives you a new set of moves for a short duration. The rest of the abilities, being Aftercut, Divine Flame, and Malevolent Shrine, had to be built under tight and self-imposed deadlines because my time in the US was over. It was time to graduate, say goodbye to all my friends, and head to Korea. Back at Korea, I was catching up with family and adjusting to the move. I chose to work on the project whenever I got the chance. Most of my days were spent in the library, and after a few weeks of late nights, I had finalized both Carnage and Aftercut. So for Carnage, this ability is pretty much like a buff. So the main thing we just need to work on is the little pose. And then in this mode, we can now use other abilities. So like this. Or you could use this. Next is Aftercut. Now the main point here is we're supposed to shatter the screen. So cut the screen in half. That's the main thing we need to focus on. So first person, hold, and release. Check this out. Oh shit, what the fuck? And release. Wash. Absolutely insane. I think this is my favorite ability by far. Like, watch. We now had Divine Flame and Malevolent Shrine left. Time was not on my side, and of course, the two abilities that required the most work were the ones remaining. I started with Malevolent Shrine. The first prototype was rough. After creating the model and adding generic slashes, I knew I needed something big. I knew the visuals needed to have a massive overall to match the absolute dread of a domain without a barrier. So I coded a dynamic world shader to instantly darken the environment upon use. And upon activation, I created a bunch of slashes onto the screen, shattering the view to smoothly transition into the actual domain. And in order to set the mood, I had to make it look like the world was ending. So after a few days of work, Minecraft was now being rendered like a pastel-like art style. But it's easier to see the change when we change the sky to a red color. As for Divine Flame, well, I decided to focus on the feeling of the technique. By making a seamless transition from first person to third person, along with a little animation where the player is kind of like playing with fire, we want to let the enemy know that this is the last thing they'll see before the world burns. But my time was up. And while I couldn't finish the technique the way I wanted, with the limited time I had, I quickly tweaked the way the arrow was being rendered and the resulting explosion. So ladies and gentlemen, this is Sukuna in Minecraft.
The year is 1991. Birds and people are living together in seemingly perfect harmony, until one day a young man catches fire. This is Phoenix. Electric Boogaloo.
You see the truth behind the veil, and you know that they're just looking for attention. Oh, you don't let their ruthlessness prevail. Oh, it's time to light your fire for ascension. Like a phoenix, you burst in a fire, burn. A thirst and desire, you transform right up in a flash. You spread your wings and rise from the ashes. Phoenix, you burst in a fire, burn. A thirst and desire, you transform right up in a flash. You spread your wings to rise from the ashes. Let you down, but you get up. They let you drown, but you don't stop. You show you're a phoenix. Phoenix, you burst in a fire, burn. The thirst and